May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brownstone.
Here.
Councilmember Rohrbach.
Here.
Councilmember Reddick.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jimenez.
Here.
And Mayor Penrose.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I don't believe we had any proclamations or presentations this evening. Okay. I would like to begin the meeting tonight in remembrance of the victims of the mass shooting that happened here in our town of Half Moon Bay. We will be interpreting in both Spanish and Mandarin. For Spanish, Nicholas Sketchowitz and Kimberly Larios. Mandarin, Emerald Hugh and Kathy Wu. Can you read the names of the victims for us? And then we can bow our heads for a moment of prayer.
现在呢是为了枪击案的受害者，我们会有默哀来读这些受害人的名字：刘志山、张爱香、陈其忠、冰叶涛、卢静思。
También estamos recordando a Marciano Martínez Jiménez, José Romero Pérez y estamos honrando también a Pedro Romero Pérez, que está recuperándose y deseando los mejores votos para su vida. Y vamos a tener un momento de silencio en honor a ellos.
Thank you. Now we'll have a report out from recent closed session meetings. I don't believe there have been any, but Catherine?
Correct, Mayor, members of council. There have not been any recent closed sessions.
Okay, we'll move on to city managers' updates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We'll only have one update tonight, and that will be presented by Lisa Lopez Rossi, our interim assistant city manager, talking about our priority setting process and listening sessions. Lisa.
Good evening, Mayor Penrose and council members. Thank you for allowing me to share these dates with you and the public tonight. I'm going to share my screen. So that we can share the dates. Is that up on the screen? Great. So we've actually, as you know, rescheduled the original listening sessions in an effort to give the city time to heal. We do have some new dates now scheduled. Locations have been confirmed. And as you can see, our first listening session will be via Zoom on Wednesday, February 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. We will have the Zoom link available as we get closer to the date. The next two listening sessions are in person. The next will be February 26th, and that will be in Spanish speaking with English interpretation. And then the third will be Thursday, March 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. at Ted Adcock Community Center with Spanish interpretation. And last but not least, we have our priority setting session where all this comes together on Wednesday, March 8th. It's a full day event from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. However, it may not go to full day, but we're allowing some time in case there's additional work that needs to be done. We're encouraging the public that if they cannot attend one of these sessions in person, then to provide feedback via the City Council listening session survey. And the website at the bottom of the screen, the hmbcity.com/listening sessions, is where you would find that survey to be able to give feedback if you're not able to make one of the listening sessions. And I think that is it, Matthew, unless I'm forgetting anything.
Nope. Thank you so much, Lisa, and thanks to Lisa and her team for leading this important effort here in the city. Looks like we've got some council member questions and comments.
Are the listening sessions that are in person, are they going to be hybrid so that members of the public can Zoom in if they choose?
At this time, they're not planned on being hybrid, only because the way they're organized is that we are taking individual feedback from people who step up to speak, and those people that were on Zoom would not be able to actually provide comment at the time. But that's why we are doing one via Zoom, so the people that cannot make one in person actually do have a way to participate.
Thanks.
Any other comments from council? I just want to say that if the public is not aware, we come up with a budget every year. And this budget is determined largely at our priority session that we're holding after listening sessions. So if you want to have some input into how the city spends your money, please come to a listening session and give us your input. It's incredibly critical. I'd like to make sure that Nicholas and Emerald provide instructions in Mandarin and Spanish.
Madam Mayor, that's happening on the interpretation lines. So everything that we've just shared has been shared in Spanish and Mandarin via the interpretation.
Okay, thank you.
Matthew, we wanted to have them provide instructions on how to access those channels in Spanish and in Mandarin for anyone
we didn't
attending.
do that. Okay.
No.
Okay.
So I wanted to see if they could jump on real quick and provide those instructions.
Should I put the dates back up on the screen?
No, Lisa, they're going to give the instructions on how to access the interpretation. We didn't do that.
Oh, I apologize.
So we're just catching up.
Ok. Buenas noches. Les hacemos saber que esta reunión se realizará íntegramente por medio de teleconferencia. Todos los miembros del Consejo y del personal participarán por medio de la plataforma de Zoom. Esta reunión se realiza conforme a las recientes enmiendas a las reglas de teleconferencia, de acuerdo con la ley de Ralph Brown, que permiten la teleconferencia durante un estado proclamado de emergencia, cuando los funcionarios locales han recomendado distancia social, que incluye la ley AB 361, que tiene el propósito de proporcionar un ambiente más seguro para el público, los funcionarios electos y el personal, al mismo tiempo que permite la operación continua del gobierno y la participación pública durante la pandemia del COVID-19. Esta reunión se llevará a cabo a través de Zoom y la interpretación al español está disponible dentro de la plataforma Zoom. Los miembros del público son bienvenidos a participar como asistentes durante las porciones de los comentarios del público. Los asistentes pueden utilizar la función de levantar su mano y serán llamados a activar su micrófono cuando se les dé la oportunidad para hablar. También pueden acceder a la reunión por vía telefónica llamando al número 669-900-9128 usando el número de identificación 955-356-14-4263. Si se une por medio del teléfono, use *9 para levantar su mano y *6 para activar o desactivar su micrófono. Para poder acceder al canal de interpretación de audio en español, haga clic en el botón de interpretación que se encuentra en el icono del globo o un mundo en su vara de tareas. La reunión será íntegramente interpretada al español. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm already done it in Spanish.
Thank you. And Emerald, have you been able to explain how folks can access Zoom and access by telephone in Mandarin? I'm sorry, you're muted.
Emerald, can you use your second device, please?
Emerald, you're muted.
Emerald, I turned off interpretation, so you could do that channel real quick.
Oh, sorry, I did not get the, Jessica, I did not get the instruction for the interpretation yet.
So I think if you could just explain that the globe at the bottom will show the different languages.
OK， 感谢 ，Thank you。嗨，您好，今天会是如果说是您要来听这个国语的这个的话呢，这个在下面的时候会有一个圆圈的，像是一个球环球的圆圈，然后圆圈那里的话就可以请您按这个国语，然后呢就可以听到国语口译员在给口译的，谢谢。
Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, we'll move on to public forum.
Our first speaker is John Olam.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. This really has been a sad time. And it's, as a community, been really shocking at times to see what's going on around us that we sometimes didn't know about or just forgotten about. I know that there's going to be a lot of discussion about what to do next. And there are things that we can do. I know that there's going to be a lot of talk about guns, but there's nothing that the city can do about guns. And to understand what you're up against when it comes to guns. After Las Vegas, and when dozens and dozens of people were mowed down because of an enhancement with a bump stock, President Trump, to his credit, banned bump stocks. Yet that was too much for the judiciary that we now have. And they threw out President Trump's bump stock ban. So that's what you're up against when you talk about going after guns. It's just nothing the city can do. But what we can do is look at some of the underlying causes. The incredible injustice that was going on right under our noses. The abuse of labor rights. The housing that surely the county has known about since forever. The conditions that are being described were being described 12 years ago about the Marchie farms. Yet people are acting as like they're surprised that nothing's been done and that, that this is all new to us. We need to look at ourselves and ask, why is it that people are living like that? And I'm telling you, the reason why is because the farmers need labor and they have to have a place to live. And we as the people, whether it be from the right or the left, whether it because of our opposition to poor people or opposition or support for frogs, have prioritized that above building homes for the people that live and work here. And that's on us as a community and as a people. And we are still buying up land to take it out of production or out of, out of big possibility of being developed. We spend so much effort talking about these horrible things, but we never really make any effort or any serious steps to do anything about it. The city has all kinds of land that it owns that we could build a municipal campground on that would give the people who are living on riverbanks a place to set up. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's a hell of a lot better than going on a riverbank. But we all know that can't happen. And it can't happen because of us. Because someone will oppose it because of frogs, or someone will oppose it because of density, as if those people weren't already here. So that's what we need to focus on, is changing ourselves. We got to take the anger out of how we talk to each other and the characterizations that we make about each other, that all on the right are racist or all on the left are communists. Thank you for allowing me to go long.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. And for the public with their hands raised, if you do have comments on the shooting, we have an item on the agenda tonight to have an update on the shooting incident. So if you do have comments, please save them for that item. Our next speaker is Steve Okonek.
Hi, Madam Mayor. My comments also have to do with the shooting, so I'll hold off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Joanne Rokoski.
Hi, my name is Joanne Rokoski. I'm a member of Coastside Faith in Action and the Unitarian Universalist Coastside community, and I thank you for the opportunity to make a public statement this evening. We all know that the last month has been devastating for many in our community. First the storm events and then the shootings. And both have shed light on the difficult and in some cases unconscionable housing situations faced by Coastside residents who work hard to provide goods and services needed in our community, but do not make sufficient income to afford the high cost of housing in this area. Much of the recent focus has been on the living conditions for farm workers who live on their work site. And attention to these conditions is absolutely essential, and the current emphasis is appropriate. But that said, it is also essential that we do not forget the untenable circumstances facing farm workers and other essential workers who live in our community rather than on the farms. Representatives of the ALAS Affordable Housing Committee have come to city council meetings for months, telling their stories of how hard they have to work to afford housing that still is overcrowded and sometimes substandard, and yet demands a huge proportion of their income. I believe that it is vitally important that their needs for affordable housing be prioritized along with the needs of the farm workers living on site. Low income and very low income families provide vital services for our communities. Often they work 2 or even 3 jobs to afford housing in our community. They need low income and very low income housing now, not years in the future. So I urge you to take action to move past the myriad of bureaucratic obstacles, community opposition, and other barriers, and get housing built for all our essential workers now. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Crystalline Gate.
Thank you. Hello, wonderful people. I wanted to announce that tomorrow at 12 noon at Mezzo Luna Restaurant, we're having our State of the Coastside. We're so excited. We have 8 speakers, and including the most wonderful Deborah Penrose. We will also have representatives from Becker's office, Berman's office, Mr. Mueller will be there representing the county, and Greg DeGez will be there from MCC, and we will have Mr. Skinner from PMAC. So, and we will have Sophia and Sean McFettridge from Cabrillo District. So we're really excited. It's our biggest one yet. And so if anybody wants to come and join us, please feel free to come to Mezzaluna tomorrow at 12 noon. And then in light of the January that would not go away fast enough, we moved our teacher appreciation event. It was originally going to be next week. We've pushed it by exactly 1 month. So it will be on March 16th. We did not want to impede any of the fundraising for the farm workers. And then we also want to be able to fundraise for the teachers in a loving and beautiful way. And then also we launched a new community website on Monday. And so now www.coside365.com. So COSIDE all year long is a website dedicated to local residents and local businesses. And the site is gonna continue to grow. And if people have ideas for the website, they are more than welcome to send them to me for resources. It launched with 55 pages, and I think I already have another 50 in my head. But welcome all the help in making sure that we make a website that locals can use and find all the cool, fun information that they want. So it has a business directory that any COSIDE business can put their listing on there. They don't have to be chamber members. The website is open to all. And comprehensive events, volunteer opportunities, and job boards, and so much more. So everybody please check out coside365.com and then email me at ceo@cosidechamber.com if there's things that you would love to see on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chrislyn.
Shauna Pickett-Gordon.
Thank you. I'm also a member of COSIDE Faith in Action, and I'll make my input pretty short because I want to echo what Joanne Rakowski said. We need extremely low income and low income housing, and we need it so many more times than we have at the present moment. We cannot possibly do without our essential workers, and especially our farm workers, and whatever can be done to move this along. We just really have got to get over the obstacles. Really appreciate your work. And I hope that the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors are equally committed to getting this work done. We have to change our mindset, but we also need to be, I think, railroaded a little bit into compassionate response to a terrible, terrible emergency. So thank you.
Thank you, Shauna.
I have no other hands raised, Mayor.
Okay. We now go
I have
to
one. Sorry, I have one.
one more.
Carolina.
Sí, dígame.
Nicholas, could you? Un momento, por favor.
¿Me puede escuchar? Okay.
Nicholas, could you translate on the second device, please?
¿Ya? Okay. Okay, sorry.
Kimberly, are you available?
Yeah, I can do it. Sí, dígame, Carolina.
Muchas gracias a todos por su atención.
我现在听不到。
Thank you to everyone for your attention.
Y darle gracias también a todas las personas, incluidas las organizaciones como ALAS, COSI Hub.
I really want to thank everyone involved with the organization like ALAS and Coastside Hub.
Gracias por todo el apoyo que estuvieron brindando a las personas en solidaridad.
Thank you to all the support you've given to everyone in solidarity.
Y creo que todas estas situaciones que ha pasado en nuestro pueblo
And I think all the situations that our people have gone through
es algo que nos debe de motivar a unirnos más como comunidad.
is something that should motivate us to get closer as a community.
Ya que hace poco estuvimos en una pequeña reunión no recuerdo, perdón. Hace poco estuvimos en una reunión donde se hablaron de muchos temas importantes para la comunidad, de lo que se piensa hacer ante esta situación.
Not long ago, we found ourselves in another small meeting talking about all the things that happened and what we're thinking about doing in this situation.
我们现在是在说对怎么样对付现在的情况。
Y es muy importante recalcar que debemos de evitar que estas situaciones se sigan dando.
And it's very important that we need to emphasize that these situations, that we keep these situations from recurring.
Porque ya podemos notar que nuestra comunidad también está siendo afectada por todas estas situaciones.
Because we can already tell that our community is being affected from all these different situations.
Nuestra comunidad también necesita sanar en todo aspecto. No lo digo solo latinos, lo digo en común.
Our community also needs to heal. And I'm not talking about just the Latinos, but everybody together.
Estas situaciones que estamos viviendo es la consecuencia que nosotros mismos hemos creado.
The situation we're living is the consequence of a situation that we ourselves have created.
Y creo que como comunidad es tiempo de unirnos y comenzar a buscar solución para todos.
And I think as a community, it's time to really come together and start to look for a solution for everybody.
Porque todos estamos viéndonos afectados.
Because we're all seeing ourselves be affected.
El racismo, la discriminación es algo que nos afecta a todos. Lo hemos podido ver.
The racism, the discrimination, it's something that affects all of us in the end. It's something that we've been able to see.
Es una enfermedad que está alcanzando a nuestros niños.
It's a sickness that's begun to reach our children.
Es algo que debemos de comenzar a cambiar.
And it's something we need to start changing.
Para que este país tenga un mejor futuro.
So that this country can have a better future.
La situación que vivimos, no solo con las viviendas, sino que también económicamente a veces causa este tipo de conflictos a veces.
The conditions that we're living us in, not only economically, cause the production of these types of scenarios.
Y creo que ustedes, que son la autoridad, deben de comenzar a ver de qué forma quieren que nosotros como comunidad también los apoyemos.
And I think that you guys who are the authority need to also think about in what ways you would like us, the community, to support that effort.
Otro punto que quisiera tocar es.
Another point that I'd like to touch on is.
Ante esta situación que se vivió, quisiera proponer que se haga un muro de protección para las escuelas.
Given the situation that's happened, I would like to suggest that we make some wall of protection for the schools.
Ya hemos visto en otros estados las situaciones, cómo pasan, cómo afectan a los niños.
We've seen in other states these situations, what happens and how it affects the children.
No quiero sonar alarmista.
I don't want to sound like an alarmist.
Simplemente hay que protegernos.
But we simply have to protect ourselves.
No hay que esperar a estar en la situación.
We can't wait until we find ourselves in the situation.
Sé que ustedes tienen nietos, tienen hijos estudiando.
I know you guys have grandchildren, you have children that are students.
Hay que ver de qué forma los protegemos.
We need to find the way to protect them.
Por favor, no esperemos a que algo más grave pase.
Please, let's not wait until something more serious occurs.
No esperemos a que algo más que nos va a afectar el racismo.
Let's not wait for something else that's going to affect this racism.
Yo sé que hasta el gobernador se dio cuenta de la situación como vivían las personas.
I know even the governor was aware or was made aware of the situation of how people were living.
El supervisor de zona tomó fotos de cómo vivían esas personas.
The zone supervisor took pictures of how those people were living.
Comencemos a trabajar por la comunidad y si ustedes necesitan nuestra ayuda, aquí estamos como latinos.
Let's begin to work for the community, and if you need our support, we're here as Latinos.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolina. We now move on to consent calendar. Does anyone on council want to pull anything or discuss anything? Okay, I'll take a motion then.
Did you want me to read the agenda, Mayor?
Thank you.
So the motion would be to approve the consent calendar consisting of item 1A, waive reading of resolutions and ordinances. Item 1B, re-ratification of resolution to continue holding public meetings remotely per AB 361. Item 1C, grant agreement with the County of San Mateo to develop and operate an opportunity center in Half Moon Bay. And item 1D, Highway 1 Safety and Operational Improvements Project North, CIP project number 538, agreement amendment with Mark Thomas Company Incorporated.
Thank you. Can I have a motion, please?
I so moved.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brownstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick,
Yes.
Councilmember Rohrbach,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jimenez,
Yes.
Mayor Penrose,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, we move on to ordinances and public hearings. Are there any this evening?
No, Madam Mayor.
No. We'll go to item number 3, resolutions and staff reports, 3A, an update on the January 23rd, 2023 mass shooting incident.
Thank you, Mayor. I have mixed feelings about providing an update tonight, but as we came out of the last couple of weeks and thought about the business that we had prepared for this council meeting, we realized that before we could kind of move on to our regular day-to-day business, we really needed to hold some space for the community to publicly share their thoughts and feelings, to ask questions, to hear from you as a council, and hopefully have a moment to reflect and think about what we've experienced the last few weeks before moving into the normal business that we as a city work on. So tonight, I'm just going to share what I hope to be a fairly brief update on a couple of things, and then turn the time over to you as a council and to the community for to talk about the issues. So January 23rd, 2023 is a day that we'll never forget here on the coast side. As we remembered earlier, 7 souls from our community were taken and dozens of lives were changed indefinitely. And over the last 2 weeks, we've seen the worst in humanity, but we've also seen the best in humanity. And tonight, I'd like to share just briefly what's happened since that day, what we've done, what we've learned, and what we plan to do. So beginning on the evening of the 23rd, as we all received the shocking news of this tragedy in our community, something that we never expected to have happen in our small and safe community and didn't think we would have to deal with. We witnessed our regional governments, local service providers, and community volunteers pull together to make sense of the unspeakable tragedy, to support the impacted families, and begin to seek our way forward together as a community. ALAS and the IDES Society immediately launched a reunification center to support the victims and the displaced families. Abundant Grace and Coastside Hope provided transport for those families so that they could get to the reunification center. City and county staff, the Red Cross, senior Coastsiders, and many others joined together to bring shelter, food, clothing, mental and physical health support to the impacted households in the language that they understood. Our federal, state, and regional leaders came together to listen to the victims, to show support, and to ensure that the Coast Side would have the resources necessary to provide for these families, as well as the many other families on the coast who live in unacceptable conditions. Teams from all these agencies continue to work with the families every day to provide the support. And I'm really pleased to share that as of this afternoon, all of the displaced families have moved from the hotel rooms that were provided by the county into temporary housing with support from Airbnb. And this provides them with a more stable place to live, more privacy, comfort, and independence as they transition back into their daily lives. Those same teams are working around the clock, and I do mean around the clock, to get these families into longer term housing that through the support of the county. And that's our goal, is to see every single one of these families in a good housing situation while we develop plans and execute plans to create better housing for the long term. Teams are working to identify options for new farm worker housing, as we've heard so many people plead for in the past and tonight, and to ensure that improved conditions for these and many other families. We have the support of our leaders, and we have to take advantage of their commitment and effectuate this change now. We've held 2 community events to recognize the victims, to pray together and begin the healing process. And along with the organizations above, we want to recognize and thank all of the community volunteers, nonprofits, and institutions that have offered and provided invaluable assistance to the Coast Side over the last 2 weeks. I also want to mention that tonight, our very own Dr. Belinda Hernandez Arriaga from ALAS joined Congresswoman Anna Eshoo at the State of the Union address. And she was there to represent the Coast Side and all of the great work of ALAS and all of our nonprofits in their support of the farm workers. And what a proud moment that is for our community to be represented at the State of the Union. There's some things that we've learned through this tragedy. First and foremost, we've learned and been reminded that we need to double down on our commitment to provide affordable housing to our most vulnerable residents, those being our service workers and our farm workers and those that are unhoused. The farm workers and the service workers ensure our community thrives. They provide services to the economy, our tourist economy, that provides many of the amenities that we enjoy every day, and fresh food for our homes and restaurants. We cannot allow the poor conditions that the victims of this tragedy lived in to exist in our community. And as mentioned earlier, and as we've heard from our state, federal, and county representatives, the will is there and the support is there. And we've got to work together to ensure that we capture this moment and make that housing available as soon as possible. And I'm pleased to share that our team, working with the county, has identified several options to make that happen. It will take a lot of political courage. It will take the support of the community, and it will take the help of the governor and our elected leaders to make sure that we can work through the bureaucracy that exists and provide this housing for these folks. Another thing that we've learned is that we're changing as a community, and we need to build the infrastructure to support everyone, especially our growing Chinese population. We are so grateful to the many volunteers and organizations, many who do not live in or typically serve the Coast Side, who reached out and stepped up to serve the Chinese farm workers and to teach us how to better support them and understand their cultural needs. That's been one of the great things that we've seen is we always pull together as a community here on the coast, but we saw the entire county and the greater Bay Area reach out and want to support. And many of those folks came and helped and supported, especially where we needed it with the Chinese farm workers. And we're learning to better serve that population moving forward. The last month has been a challenging one for our community, struggling through 2 crises. But what we've seen, we already knew, that together we can get through the challenges and take care of our community. And I just want to take a moment before I turn the time back over to recognize our incredible city staff who've worked tirelessly since New Year's Eve, some without any break, to ensure that our community is cared for and supported. I am so proud to be part of this team and grateful to the council for their support and leadership through these challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that update. Does anyone on council have anything to say, to add, questions to ask? Yeah, I just want to say that Councilmember Barbach, did you want to say something?
I just want to hear from the public about this tragedy.
Okay. Jessica, do we have members of the public that wish to speak?
Yes, Steve Oakneck.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Madam Mayor, fellow councilmen, or honorable council people, I want to introduce myself. It's Steve O'Connick, and I'm a 39-year resident of Half Moon Bay. Many of you know my wife, Bonnie, who's been an elected official years ago for GSD and SAM. I don't have anywhere near the fame she does. I have a number of concerns on the shootings and want to offer maybe a little different perspective. Perhaps because of my background, I am not in law enforcement, but my career was in energy research. And in that, I was often involved in instances where people had outages for various times, and it was always a matter of going back and looking what the heck caused it. And as I went through the staff report tonight, I was disappointed because I didn't see anything about that. I'm very much in agreement with the stuff that's being spoken of tonight, the need for housing, the need for better wages, cleaning up stuff at the mushroom farms. And my wife, me, and our daughter, youngest daughter, Brianna, who lives with us, have all written checks to these organizations. But in essence, this was a crime. And I'm not seeing that on the reports. I'm not seeing any status on what's going on with looking at this as a crime, where we're at. And I assume all Half Moon Bay residents know that the city dissolved its police department in 2011 and agreed to an arrangement with San Mateo County Sheriff's Office to provide police protection. What they may not know is how many of the officers assigned here actually live on or have any ties to the coast side, or how they've gotten to know about the locales off Main Street. There are a couple of other towns that have a similar arrangement with the county, but primarily, none of them resemble Half Moon Bay due to its agrarian tilt. I don't think there are any mushroom farms in Millbrae. And until January 23rd, I frankly could have cared less. But I'm not seeing anything in the, say, the staff report, looking at schools and emergency communications, Captain Elvin's quote of taking a long, hard look at what we've done well, what we could do better as far as policing is concerned. And I'm concerned about the timeline between the incidents on Highway 92 and Highway 1. And basically, I'm wondering whether the arrangement with the San Mateo Sheriff's Department still is the way to go in the wake of January 23rd. I believe there should be an unbiased third party used to come up with an answer on this. I'm over, so thank you for listening, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, Steve. Rocio Avila Garcia.
Buenas noches a todos.
Good evening to all.
Gracias por darme la oportunidad de hablar hoy y gracias.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk today.
Y quiero dar las gracias a todo el concilio y a todas las organizaciones que ayudaron en esta tragedia que ha pasado aquí.
I want to give thanks to the council and all the organizations that have helped and worked during this situation.
Pero también quiero recalcarles que estas situaciones se deben a tanto estrés que pasan las personas, las familias.
But I want to make note that all this situation also is because of the stress that all the families are going through.
Del trabajo, de la situación en la que vivimos.
Because of the work and the situations that we are living at.
Porque a veces los trabajadores tienen que aguantar las condiciones, malas condiciones de una vivienda para poder tener un techo.
Because the workers have to support and endure all the bad situations that we are going through in our living, because in order to support the situation.
A veces tenemos problemas con personas donde vivimos. Todo esto nos afecta a nosotros, afecta a los trabajadores y afecta a las familias.
Sometimes we have problems with the people, the neighbors that we live in our place, and that affects us in our families and also in our works.
Esta situación que pasó afectó a todas las personas aquí en la comunidad y especialmente a los niños también.
The situation that we went through affected the whole community, but especially to the children.
Los niños en la escuela, mi hija principalmente está sufriendo algo de una ansiedad porque piensa y dice, algo va a pasar en la escuela, va a llegar alguien, nos va a hacer daño, nos va a matar.
My daughter especially is going through a very anxiety time at school because she's thinking and saying, oh, something bad is going to happen at school. Someone can get in and will kill us.
Es esta situación de ahora estar pensando que algo va a pasar, necesitamos hacer algo, proteger a nuestros hijos, proteger.
This situation that we are going through and with the kids, the anxiety that they are going through, we need to take action and protect them.
Y necesitamos quitarle ese pensamiento que algo les va a pasar. Necesitamos darles un hogar seguro a nuestros hijos.
We need to take those thoughts of fear out of our kids and give them security.
También otra cosa que quería comentar, la última reunión que tuvieron, que dijeron que teníamos que esperar 4 años para poder buscar permisos para las viviendas asequibles aquí en Half Moon Bay.
Also the last meeting where it was mentioned that we have to wait for 4 years in order to get the permits and for us to try to achieve those housing.
Ahora con esto que pasó, ¿ustedes piensan esperar 4 años más? ¿O qué es lo que están pensando hacer? ¿Cuál es la reacción que están tomando ahora.
And concerning on what has happened, are you going to wait 4 years more until this is solved, or what other action are you planning to take in order to solve this problem?
¿Cómo es que Terra Garden anunció que va a construir viviendas para sus trabajadores en un año? Él, ¿por qué está diciendo que en un año va a construir siendo una compañía? Y la ciudad y el condado que tienen más poder, puedo decir para mí que más poder, o que pueden buscar más soluciones rápidas. Ok, está bien.
How is it possible that Terra Garden is saying that they are going to build houses in 1 year and be waiting just to solve that?
¿Y cómo es que el condado y la ciudad piensan durar 4 años para poder buscar esos permisos? No puedo creer que tengan que durar tanto tiempo y Terra Garden, siendo una compañía, pueda durar, decir que solo en un año.
And the county and the city have to wait 4 years in order to get all the permits to build those housing. How is it possible that a private company can do that in 1 year?
Espero que esto sea más rápido y no tengamos que durar 4 años o estar pasando por otra tragedia más.
I hope that this can be solved faster and not be waiting for 4 years or until the next situation with violence happens.
El gobernador dijo que había mucho dinero para poder construir. O sea que se tiene el dinero y hay muchos lugares aquí donde se puede construir. Así que, por favor, hagámoslo.
The governor said that there is a lot of money in order to build housing. And here we have a lot of places or land where this can be done. So the next step would be just to do it.
Y el supervisor también lo dijo el día de la vigilia. El dinero lo tenemos, así que usémoslo, por favor.
The supervisor also said that in the day of the vigil. And if the money is there, he said, we need to use it. So if it is there, why don't we use it?
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias, Rocio. Carolina Carvajal.
¿Me oye?
Sí, le escucho.
Bueno.
Diga declaraciones cortas para que pueda interpretar todo lo que usted dice.
Hola. ¿Me puede
Sí.
escuchar?
Sí, le escucho.
¿Me escuchan?
Sí, le escucho, señora.
Ok, yo no le escuchaba a usted, lo siento.
Estoy interpretando por el canal principal.
Ok.
Adelante.
¿Sí me oye?
Sí, le escucho. Adelante,
Bueno.
señora, que
Ok.
le escucho.
Ok.
Yo la interpreto por el canal principal.
Ok, perfecto. Quiero recalcar el agradecimiento a las organizaciones antes mencionadas.
I want to mention also our thanks for all the organizations mentioned before.
Bueno.
Sí, señora, le estoy interpretando.
Ok. Es triste y lamentable que nuestra comunidad tuvo que pasar por este trágico día.
It's very sad that the community had to go through this tragic day.
Para que las personas que están en el poder vean la realidad.
For the people that are in power could see the reality.
Honestamente, yo esperaba que más de una persona del concilio se expresara de esto ante los medios.
Honestly, I expected more than one person from the council would express itself about this.
Quería que las personas también vieran que nosotros sí les importamos a ustedes como concilio.
I want the people to see that we really are important for you in the council.
Gracias a Joaquín,
Thank you to Joaquín,
porque él expresó mucho de nuestra comunidad.
because he expressed much of our community.
Es triste que no solo los latinos suframos con la vivienda,
It's sad that not only the Latin people, the Hispanics are suffering because of the housing.
como pudieron observar las personas asiáticas,
As you could see, the Asian people,
sufren aún más que nosotros.
they are suffering even more than us.
Es muy triste y lamentable
It's very sad
que ellos ganan $9.50 la hora,
that they are making $9.50 per hour,
cuando todos sabemos que el mínimo ahora es 16.40.
because we know that the minimum today is 16.40.
¿Dónde están las leyes que regulan eso?
Where are the laws that are regulating that?
¿Dónde está la unión y la igualdad?
Where is the union and equality?
Sé que muchos somos inmigrantes.
I know that we are many immigrants.
Hemos venido a este país
We have come to this country
huyendo tal vez de violencia de nuestros países
escaping from the violence in our countries.
y lo venimos a encontrar aquí,
And we come to find it here too.
y donde es un país supuestamente muy avanzado.
This that is a country that is supposedly very advanced,
Y todavía se siguen viendo estos casos de injusticia.
and we can still see these injustice cases.
Creo que les falta mucho por conocer de la comunidad.
I think that there is a lot, much more to know about the community.
Es triste que el rico sigue siendo rico
It's sad that the rich continue being rich,
y el pobre, por más que trabaje, no puede crecer más.
and the poor, despite all the work that they do, they cannot improve.
Yo he escuchado personas que dicen que las personas asiáticas trabajaban más de 12 horas.
I have heard people saying that the Asian people work more than 12 hours.
¿No es triste eso?
Isn't that sad?
Aparte de todo lo que han sufrido ellos, lo que está sufriendo ahora nuestros niños con estas situaciones, los maestros están traumados.
Besides all that they have been suffering and our kids are suffering, but also the teachers are suffering.
Yo fui a una reunión en la escuela de mi hija,
I went to a meeting in my daughter's school
donde la directora dice que cada vez que ella deja ir a los niños, ella llora.
when the principal said that every time that she dismisses the kids, she starts crying
Porque le preocupa qué puede pasarle a los niños en el trayecto a su hogar.
because she's concerned of what can happen to the kids in their way home.
Los niños cuando oyen las ambulancias o los policías dice, es una emergencia.
When kids, they hear an ambulance or a siren, they say, is that an emergency?
Yo sé que muchos de ustedes han podido vivir eso.
I know that many of you could have lived that.
Los niños se expresan así.
Kids express themselves in that way.
¿Qué más estamos esperando para hacer algo por la comunidad?
What else are we waiting for in order to do something more for the community?
¿Esperaremos los 4 años para tener una vivienda justa para todos?
Are we going to wait 4 years more to have a fair housing for all?
Esa es la incógnita que les quiero dejar.
That is a question that I want to leave in you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina.
Next speaker is Alice Linsmeyer.
Thank you all. I want to say a special thanks, first of all, to Vice Mayor Joaquin, who's for years been working with our farm worker community here and has been reminding us of all these needs all along. And then also special thanks to Matthew and the city staff that's been working so diligently as well during this time after the tragedy. And I just wanted to say that I want to reiterate what Matthew said, what Carolina said, that what Rocio said, that we need to really be looking at housing urgently for very low income and essential workers across the board. Asian, Latino, low income housing is desperately needed. The other thing I just am becoming very aware of in this whole process, and we've been working on this for years, and I'm wondering if the city can help to at least provide space, if not something else, is that we need legal services here on the coast side. I read a statistic just recently from a UC Merced farm worker health study saying that 67% of farm workers are always worried about their status and always worried to speak up because of just not feeling like they have the support or rights. So if we can get legal services here have a presence here on the coast side, it's too impossible for people. As you could see, people are biking to the farms to get over the hill to legal services in Redwood City, to then get to referred to another place. So we need legal services, immigration services, and other ways to show our support for the community that's working so hard to feed us, to run our city, and in all these different ways that they are. So I'd like to also consider that as well as one of the needs that we can, as a city, come together and provide in the nearest future. It's certainly now, but in the upcoming time as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice. John Olin.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just want to reiterate, the reason there isn't enough housing is us. Not for lack of money, not for lack of land. It's simply been a choice that, and it's not just Half Moon Bay, it's a choice that has been made in communities all over California and all over America. People get in the suburbs and they don't want no one else there. And until we face that it's us, it's not anything more than us that is stopping it, that's causing this problem. We can talk about making laws and doing that, but everybody that's paid any attention around the last 30, 40 years knows there's nothing that was surprising or should be about what was happening at those places, the kind of living families, children were living in. None of that was unknown. This has just been allowed. And it's been allowed because it's really what we want. We don't want people living around us who don't have the money we have. We don't want people blocking our view or maybe getting in front of us on the highway. And until this council is really, willing to step up and do the right thing in spite of the worst aspects of ourselves, that's not going to change. We can talk about all this or not, but all these problems have been known for so long. In the fact that 7 people died, that's going to go away. People are going to forget that. America have become numb to this kind of thing. So this is the opportunity now to move hard and fast and with leadership. We've got the land. There's more than enough money out there. There's ungodly amounts of money out there. And people want to build houses. The people who need the houses know how to build the houses in many respects. So we just got to be honest with ourselves and honest to your constituents that we're the problem. And I wish I had more time, but it's really sad. And so the last thing, I know there's going to be talk about a memorial or something. I would really like to know something about these folks. Why were they here? Where'd they come from? What were they dreaming of? Why were they working so hard? Were they putting their kids through school? Were they afraid of where they came? I want to know this kind of what led them to this place. Let's put a face on these folks, not just a name. They had dreams. They had families. They came from somewhere. I'd like to know about that. Thanks.
Thank you, John. I have no other hands raised, Mayor. You are muted, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it back to council. Joaquin.
Thank you. Yes, thinking about the comments that were brought up today, to our city council meeting by our community members. And we have to really think about how we've been bringing up to these meetings for years now. I remember, stories that were told by our community members 2016, 2017, 2018, and it was the same thing. There was a family that stayed in an apartment in their community that actually had a hole in their kitchen. The raccoons were coming up through the floor into the apartment. They were afraid to say something to the landlord because they knew they were going to be evicted. There's a lot of fear. I don't know if you remember me talking about, how much fear we had in our community to, that will speak up. Fear of eviction, fear of deportation. In 2019, when Bay City closed the doors, you might remember that I said, this is a test, talking about emergency preparedness. That was the talk in 2019. And I mentioned, this is a test. We need to prepare for something. Now it took what happened on the 23rd for us to pay better attention, more attention. We already had the spotlight on the farm workers. We've been talking about their housing, not only the farms, but in our community. And it was mentioned today. We have proof of how the farm workers live. Farm workers coming to our meetings and expressing how they live, crowded. And I don't know if it's true that the owners of the mushroom farm on 92 are going to build in 1 year. But really have to think about it. I mean, at the vigil, I did say, how much do we really care about our community of essential workers? One of the reporters did a little bit of research about our economy of the coast, San Mateo County, about how much income is brought in by farming in our community. She compared what happened 2018, 2020. Millions of dollars of difference. If we lose our farm workers, if we lose our essential workers, what's going to happen to our economy? Sometimes we have to think about money because a lot of us, all we think about is money. We don't think about the human lives. I mean, we've been going at it, 10 years now. It's a priority to build housing. I know we're moving forward. At the last meeting, we said 4 years before we can build anything. And look what happened right after the meeting. We got a spotlight on how the farmer was living. Something we already knew. It's not news to us. And there's other places like that in San Mateo County. But there's a fear of the people living there. I actually had a conversation with one of them today. I asked them, can we go see your place, how you live? You know what they said? Can you protect me so I won't not get evicted from here? I don't have other place to go. That's the fear of being evicted. Well, they'd rather live. So, solutions. We have solutions. We have money. How fast can we build? Thank you.
Harvey.
I absolutely agree with Joaquin and the speakers that it's absolutely essential that we build housing for our farm workers and our other low-income workers. That's something that I think the council has a vested interest in and worked hard at. I want to throw out another idea that can be implemented very quickly, which could have a significant effect on some low-income people, and that is rent control. We started to bring that up a year or two ago, and it got waylaid. But in terms of what this council can actually do, this is something that we could emulate East Palo Alto, who has rent control. That can make some difference in our low-income workers. And I think as a council, when we talk about our priority setting in March, I think we should go in that direction. We're all committed to building affordable housing. I've heard comments tonight that we're not, and it's just not true. We are. It's if people realize how difficult it is and all the hurdles, they would be a little more sympathetic to the fact that even though we have the political will, there's a lot of other requirements, and we're working our damnedest to see if we can overcome them. But I just want to be clear that we're not against affordable housing, and this fact that it actually takes a long time to build is a fact. And you know, the reality is that we need the housing, we have the political will, and it'll happen, but we just have to press forward and actually do it. Thank you.
Other council members have anything they wanted to say? Robert.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the speakers, and I agree with what Harvey just said. So there's a consistent theme that I've been reading, you know, a number of articles from the Mercury News, Chronicle, LA Times. And the story that kept coming up was from outside agencies, farm bureaus, this and that. Well, we would have done something, but no one was filing any complaints. I read that and heard that over and over. And those organizations, those agencies that were claiming that, I mean, they know darn well that no one's going to complain for all the reasons that we've heard. People would get evicted. A lot of these folks are powerless. It's true, they don't have attorneys. And I felt that there was a lot of, you know, the owners of the farm, Never really heard from them. Said they hired a PR person, which I always find very suspect, why they weren't really answering any questions. And all of a sudden made an offer that they would build housing there. But I sense that there's probably further investigations going on. I'll be interested. Harvey, I like the idea of rent control, but frankly, I also would like to see, we now have a oversight, talking in the county about having an oversight committee for police and sheriffs. I think we should have a housing board. What happens if people want to file a complaint about housing conditions without a fear of being retaliated against and evicted? And perhaps we can research or something like that exists in other small towns. They certainly have them in large cities. And they investigate landlords who evict people under the pretext that they want to, for example, move family members in. And then, they jack up the rents as soon as those people are evicted. So I just don't feel like there's any real oversight where anyone really takes responsibility when these complaints come. And if there's a fear of people being evicted, there's a fear like, okay, we'll just close, we'll shut down all that housing, we'll close the farm. There's no solutions that are involving a transition. So what do you do if you have to shutter a bunch of trailers because they're uninhabitable in that interim period so people don't feel they'll have no place to go if they get kicked out of their homes? I think we do have a lot of options for housing. And now all of a sudden there's this green light of everyone who wants to bring in some funding and money. So my question is, what are those options? Catherine, remind me, if we want, when it comes to a meeting decisions where we're going to spend funding, that can be a closed session, right?
This is in regards to real estate?
If we have a number of options, there's money coming, we get $10 million offered to us. We say, well, how are we going to spend that? And we want to discuss that. Can that be a closed session?
I know that would generally be an open session item.
Or maybe a special session. Okay.
Maybe a special session to focus on that.
Yeah. So we have a number of, yeah.
One other thing I just wanted to point out, you were mentioning tenant protections, and I did just want to flag that your council did adopt a rental security measure ordinance a few years ago. There is actually provisions for landlord-tenant dispute resolution there, but of course that raises the issue, as several of you and speakers mentioned, of needing, a lot of times tenants do need help raising those issues and bringing them, to the table, and that's where legal aid can come in to assist. But I did just want to mention that the city has adopted some, rental security measures for tenants, not rent control, but other measures that can be helpful.
Right. Well, there's something that Ray Mueller said the other night. It was in relationship to infrastructure, but it stays in my head. He said, we need to get together, but don't come with more discussion, come with plans for action. So I think as a council, whether it's a closed session or a public meeting, if there's going to be X number of dollars coming in and everyone's looking at their own sites, which ones they think would be a great place for housing, we have a paid consultant, we have a full-time housing coordinator. I think it would be great to look at all those sites again, figure out how much money's coming in, which sites are most conducive, are in good shape, almost turnkey for building housing, because all the resources are there, all the water's there, electricity, sewerage, and start making some decisions that make the most sense in terms of ease of building housing and start prioritizing, because, you know, we still look at some sites where there could be a lot of issues and problems, and we're in the coastal zone and all that. So we have some experts on our staff. And I think as we start to figure out how we're going to spend all this funding that may come in, we come pre-prepared to say, yes, these would be our top priorities. These were most easiest sites to start developing and bring in good developers, and have that in our hand quickly. So if funding comes in, we can start making decisions in unison and with consensus. So that's what I would propose that we do, whether it's a special meeting, closed session, whatever we can do. I'm done, thanks.
Debbie.
Yeah, I don't want to go over what Harvey and Robert just said, but I think a lot of what they said, you know, I can support. But I certainly want to reiterate that I know the council and our staff, our housing staff, community development staff, city manager, you know, we've been, you know, not leaving any stone unturned as it relates to housing. The council and staff have really, you know, committed to this process. But it is difficult to build affordable housing. It's expensive. It often takes multiple funding sources. It takes the efforts of a county, which, you know, has the wherewithal to do things like housing boards, rent subsidies. But we have to continually acknowledge that this city does not have the money to build housing itself. You know, this is not a rich city. You know, we're not overflowing with money where we can just go into our kitty and take out, you know, $30 million and build a housing development or operate it. That's not our role, and that, you know, we don't have the money to do that. So what we can do is try to leverage outside resources, and I think staff is doing a pretty good job at that. I think we've already done a lot of prioritizing on sites, maybe a little left to do, but I think staff has pretty much put that together. So if in fact we do get a windfall, you know, I think, you know, we're pretty ready to go. We have multiple nonprofit housing partners that have been working with us. So I don't think we're in a bad position. We've been doing a lot of work, but we have to get the money. And that means continuing to coordinate with our legislators in the county. But our role is to coordinate. Our role is to leverage outside resources. My heart breaks when I think about our housing situation for our essential workers and the farm workers, because I know how complicated it is. And I'm so, you know, sorry and heartbroken over it. Part of the thing is the issue is so complex, and we've been dealing with it now for a few years already, that, you know, it's mind-boggling to me. I'm in a state where I'm fighting lethargy because of my sadness over the shootings, and trying to continue on and you know, make progress on our priorities. But right now, and I know my fellow council members feel the same way. Everybody is hurting. You know, nobody is ignoring the situation. So this is an opportunity. We can't let it go to waste. I'm hoping we can make some meaningful change as a result. If we don't, I'll be really devastated. So I think we all recognize this is an opportunity, and we have to take advantage of people's sensitivities to the situation to press our case and, you know, bring the bacon back home. So I hear everybody. I hear the pain. I feel it. You know, we all do here, and we can't let up. And especially right now, we have to, you know, dig in even further to make sure that we can make this time deliver for all of us, deliver positive and good things and better connections among us. So but that's all I have to say. I support the staff of the council and the priority for housing. Know that we're doing a lot. I'm sorry if it's not registering with people, and I know why it's not registering, and it would not register for me too, because I'm in a position of pain and suffering, and I don't have adequate housing. So namaste. You know, I hear you, and I'm with you from this situation.
Thank you. Joaquin?
I'm sorry, I just have to comment again. Debbie, that's the same thing with her, you know, for years already. You know, and that's what I am at. Yes, a few minutes ago, we worry more about the money than what a human life is. You know, if we really wanted to build housing, we will get it done. I know it's not easy, but it's the same thing we've been listening to for years. That we all want to build housing, and it's difficult. We know it's difficult. But, you know, what I'm saying is, you know, we keep hearing the same thing over and over again. And now, I mean, we don't, I mean, maybe because I'm familiar how the farm worker community, the essential workers live, and I know how they live for many years. I take this very personal. I know it's been nonstop for us. It's been years. When we really want to do something, we will do it. We'll find ways to do it. But it's, you know, I know it's difficult to give the raise so that we do care, but we need action, you know. Stop, you know, stop, I mean, yes, aside and yes, action. We need to get it done. We take advantage of this right now that we.
Sorry, Joaquin, I'm sorry, Joaquin.
It's going to happen. Some people are going to forget about what happened to the 7 farm workers. Yeah. I'm saying, you know, it's a few months from now, people are going to forget what happened to the 7 farm workers. Or children are not. You heard from Rocio. You know, many of us are not going to forget. Because it's actually people that we knew. People that we saw often. And even then, you know, we have families in Half Moon Bay that, you know, that are suffering because of the housing. But it keeps repeating the same thing over and over again. How much do we really care?
Yeah, I agree with everyone's point of view here. It has not been an easy struggle. It's something we've been working on for as long as I've been on council, 8+ years. It's been my priority for 8+ years, and I think the priority of most of the council member here, I think all of the council members here. I'd like to say that after hearing each of the council members, the one remark that really strikes home for me is Joaquin's remark. If we really wanted to do it, we'd do it. And I think we all agree with that. The question is, how do we get it done? We've been trying for 8 years and it hasn't happened. So what I would like to propose is that as a council, we sit down with our county, state, and federal representatives and brainstorm in a special session until we come up with a plan for how we can accept the money that they're supposedly going to be giving us to help us. Let's do it now. Let's not wait. Let's make it something that happens in February. And I think that's a start. I don't think until we get all the parties together who are all saying, gee, we'd like to help. Yes, we're going to dedicate funds to you. Yes, you do need housing. We agree. We're going to give you money. There's money in the bucket. Let's make it happen. Let's make it into a plan. Like Robert said, let's have a plan. And that's my thinking. Matthew.
I think that's a wonderful idea, Mayor. And just I wanted to make sure you and the community know that some of that groundwork is being laid right now. Jill Ekus, our Community Development Director, Mike Noche, our Housing Coordinator, and several members of county leadership. We've met several times, and Jill is working on a really strong list based on all the work that's been happening over the last several years here at the city to create that plan because no one's going to offer us a blank check. We have to come forward with what we need, where we need it, how we need it. And that's the work that has to happen. And I think that's the work you're describing now. If you'd like, Jill is prepared to share some of that with you now. I also think it's important for us to create some clarity on some of the concerns we've heard about the 4 years that was mentioned around 555 Kelly and how that is different than some of the other things we're talking about, and just make sure we're all on the same page as far as the realities of housing development and all of our different options and different ways of doing this. Would that be okay, Mayor Penrose?
Yes, of course.
Okay, Jill, please.
Good evening. Thank you. Appreciating all these comments tonight. I'm here to, I think, share a combination of hopeful news as well as some continued sobering news that I think is important for us to keep in mind. Addressing the mushroom farm first and foremost, because that came up in public comment. We hope they can do it in a year. We don't know if they can. They're going to need a lot of help. They're just getting started, and your county and city staff are going to be working with them on that. So, but the timeline is indicative of the kind of housing that they're proposing to have. We're looking more at mobile homes, modular types of housing units. This is very different than 555 Kelly. So, Mike Noche, our housing coordinator, and I are working with our consultant as well as the Department of Housing with San Mateo County and other folks on really a series of housing types that would be phased in different timeframes. So other modular types of housing that are coming forward already that we've reported to you on. The expansion of the Hilltop Mobile Home Park is making progress. It would include 32 units. We're trying very hard to get this property owner on a 1 year or shorter timeline, and we've been meeting with them routinely. We also have a few agricultural properties within the city limits that have room for a few units, and we've been working with those property owners as well. With the new thought for them of housing this displaced population or other farm workers. We want to reassure you that we understand that this 1 or 2 farms are not the only place where we need to address this need. I do want to talk about 555 Kelly just briefly. This is really kind of the sobering part of this is, yes, it's going to take some time. It's a complex project. And also the school district is proposing 60 units, possibly on the Hatch school site. So that would be for another population. So the combination of 555 Kelly and the Hatch project is 100 units. But those are more multi-story, multi-family development. They're not modular. They are done according to a site, and they have a lot of funding requirements. So it just takes longer, and I'd like to refer you to consider the Moss Beach project, Cypress Point. That site has been zoned for affordable housing since 1986. We're going to go a lot faster than that. That site had to get downzoned to even let it move forward. It's now moving along with 71 units. We understand a lot of folks are still very concerned about it. And, it's coming forward and it could support 71 families. And we really hope that all of the housing on the coast side is considered, not just that in the city limits. And then the final thing is Measure D. We've been doing everything we can to make sure Measure D gets accounted for with these projects. It took 2 years to get enough Measure D allocations for the Hilltop Mobile Home Park expansion. It also took 2 years to get enough allocations for 555 Kelly. And we're already seeing that we're out of them for this year. So some of these other projects we're going to be having to borrow forward, possibly at the grace of the Coastal Commission, who sees this as an emergency. So want to reassure you, we're looking at every angle we can with Coastal Commission, our county colleagues, different kinds of funding programs, different housing types, public projects, private projects, and completely appreciating that 555 Kelly is very special. It's very important, but it's not the only project that is being put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. I appreciate your report out. I don't think that answers the painful question that Joaquin has asked. We need the housing now. And what you're saying all sounds very reasonable. And I understand that you're telling us the truth and you're telling us your bottom line. And this is the difficulty that you find yourself in. What I'm saying is we now have a political moment which has brought political leaders who hold the strings to money bags. And we need to jump on this moment and take advantage of it and do it with all of our political will and with your help and with the help of city staff and with whatever help else we need to get it done, and we need to get it done now. And that's, I'm not saying it will happen now. I'm saying we need to get it done now. And if we go in with that attitude, and we go in and we talk about our desperation with the people that hold the money bag strings, maybe they'll see a way to do it faster. I'm not talking about 555 Kelly. I understand that that's a special project. But there are other places in town. There are other properties in town which could be bought by the county, the state, the feds, somebody with city help and developed. And, Stone Pine is one of them. The Yep property is another one of them. There is land by the Johnston House. There are places that modular homes could be parked on, and that could be done quickly. So that's the kind of meeting I'd like to have with the officials who say that they hear our plight and that they want to help. That's all I'm suggesting.
No, thank you. And I was just trying to cover the irons that were in the fire. We completely appreciate that there's opportunity right now, and your city manager is has his finger on the pulse of that. And as soon as we're able to move forward in those discussions, we will be at the ready. I think it's important for folks to understand also that the effort to provide rapid rehousing for displaced individuals right now, that energy for that is hopefully going to settle out, and then we will have more time to do more of the things that you're talking about, Mayor Penrose, and we appreciate that. I also wanted to note those modular projects that I was mentioning are within, we're hoping a 1-year kind of timeline or less. Some of them are simpler. So not 4 years, much sooner.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Robert.
Yeah, first off, Jill, I really appreciate all the work you and your team are doing. I really appreciate you differentiating the kind of housing, we're talking about on the farms, modular and trailers, and how different that kind of housing is from sort of things that we're doing 5-5 Kelly or thinking about elsewhere. And the 4 years that we were told it was take, I mean, that wasn't us making up those numbers. I mean, that was coming from Mercy Housing, our partner in doing that project. So, we don't just make up those timelines out of our head. They're folks who are expert builders of housing and are saying, if they say it's a minimum of 4, great. If there's some other possible barriers, that can be opened up for us. But, and I also heard Matthew loud and clear when he says, you're working on some putting together pieces with county, state, and other folks. I think Ray Mueller is a real blessing to the coast. I've heard him speak at the panel the other night on infrastructure. And I think he's one of the clearest thinkers I've heard in a long time. And he is an advocate for the coast. So back to Mayor Penrose's suggestion, if we're going to pull something together, I feel very confident if you have people like Ray who can help. He's a good attorney. He knows he's built housing down in Menlo. And he's very clear at saying, here's the goal, here are the steps, here's what we can do, and getting everybody, on a good path and keeping things moving. He's a very action-oriented kind of guy. People trust him. So I think if we have folks like that, I'm very optimistic. So thank you, Matthew, for mentioning that. And I look forward to all the efforts you're doing working with those folks and pulling it together.
Mayor, you're muted if you were talking.
I'm sorry. I'm going to take Debbie's comments first, and then you, Matthew.
So referring to what Robert just said about Supervisor Mueller, so at this infrastructure event last week, he talked about a coastal resilience infrastructure plan. Now, I know when we did our own coastside recovery initiative, the group working on that made sure that our plan talked about not just infrastructure like roads and sewers and stuff like that, like Ray's talking about, but also social infrastructure, which I believe includes housing. So I think, we want to hold the county's feet to the fire on this infrastructure plan and make sure that it includes things like housing and, maybe even, the give for social services. I don't think we can leave out the social piece when we're talking about community infrastructure. Our nonprofits are part of the infrastructure. And, we were talking earlier on our consent agenda about this workforce development center. And since we had spoken previously with the Coastside Recovery Initiative about community lending, maybe now's the time as we implement this economic development center to bring in, the local banks, San Mateo Credit Union, maybe Tri-State, because I think we're going to need a banking piece. And we're going to need it for housing, and, in addition to, job development, that sort of thing. So I don't think I think we have to combine housing issues with these other activities, not just jobs, but housing. People might have jobs here, but if they don't have housing too, we're still in a deficit. So I want us to make sure that we include community lending as a piece that's going to be really important for people to buy houses as they get better jobs, move out of the farming industry maybe. But the lenders are going to be really important. So that's all I have to say about that.
Madam Mayor, I've got a recommendation that I'd like to share now, just based on everything we've heard. I think that as a council, you need to appoint an emergency ad hoc housing subcommittee that can quickly start, as it'd be 2 council members that could quickly start meeting with county and state officials, holding lots of meetings, lots of discussions, and then bring it back to the council and eventually culminate in this big meeting that you're talking about. But I think if we start with the big meeting, we're going to spend most of our time just trying to get the lay of the land and get the context in place, and it'd be very difficult to have a good discussion with everybody at the table there. Whereas an ad hoc subcommittee could go out and have these meetings and do these preparations offline and then bring them back for a much bigger meeting. So just interested in your thoughts on that. I think that's a way for us to move quickly beyond just the work that the staff is doing right now.
I'm agreeable with that. I think that'd be fine. Robert?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Matthew. I was looking at our list of subcommittees this morning on the website, kind of saying, oh my God, how come we don't have a subcommittee on housing if we have all these other things? So yeah, I think it's a good idea. So thank you.
Yeah, I would like to be on it, and I would like to have Council Member Jimenez on it as well. What does the council think of that?
I think it's a good idea.
Catherine, what's the
Joaquin,
process?
how do you feel about that before we enlist you?
Sign me up.
All right, good. Just want to always like to check.
Already been signed up. Catherine, what's the process? I know I just kind of sprung this in the middle of a meeting. What's the process to make sure we're following our protocols?
Yeah, so we weren't agendized to appoint a ad hoc subcommittee at this meeting. I don't want to slow anything down, but I would suggest we bring back a resolution at our next meeting on consent to formally, approve this ad hoc committee. Jessica, I'm just going to check in with Jessica, our city clerk, to make sure that works from her perspective.
Agreed. Yes.
My problem with that is it's 2 weeks.
Catherine, if I'm correct, though, the mayor and vice mayor can meet because it's just 2, as long as they're not communicating with the other council members. So they can be in compliance with the Brown Act and start hosting these meetings, and then we'll formalize the subcommittee. And part of that, I think, is we have to formalize the purpose and the term, because it is an ad hoc subcommittee as opposed to a long-term standing committee.
Great.
Agreed.
Okay. And can we have a staff person working with us on this?
Yes, it'll likely be Jill, but we'll take a look at all of our staff resources and determine who's the best person, but it's probably Jill.
Great.
We just need to make sure that it fits in with all the other work she's doing right now and doesn't slow down the other things she's working on.
No, I understand that. But if we're going to be jumping on this, I'd like us to have 3 of us at least working on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now.
Okay. Thank you.
Great idea. Thank you, Matthew. Okay.
Are we ready to move to our next business item, which is related, but a more direct business item?
Yes, item 3B, declaration of local emergency and executive order.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
And we have Karen Decker with us, who's been leading the charge among a bunch of other things. I'm not sure she's sleeping right now. So we want to get some stuff accomplished so she can take a breath here. And of course, Catherine, our city attorney, has been working closely on this. And I'll give a little bit of context and then turn the time over to them. When we kind of got through the Monday night of the 23rd and working with the families and making sure they were all housed for the night and getting some services, we started fielding a lot of outreach from other organizations and communities. And I think, Mayor, you received a notification from a group that unfortunately is a group we're probably now part of, which is a survivors group, communities that have experienced what we've just experienced and have developed resources and best practices for communities as they face similar issues around these mass shooting events. And one of the most clear recommendations that they provided was the creation of a centralized victims fund that really focuses on the long-term needs of the victims and raising money and providing transparency in the distribution of those funds for the long term. And so it's something we immediately took up, and we've talked with a lot of other agencies and believe what we've developed for you tonight is a best approach to supporting these families in the long term. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Karen and Catherine. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. And good evening, Mayor Penrose and Council and Community. I'm Karen Decker, Economic and Community Vitality Manager. I'm pleased to be joined by Catherine, your city attorney, where we will be co-presenting this information on a centralized fund to support victims and their families who were directly impacted by the events of January 23rd. I will speak to the purpose and the structure of the fund, and then Catherine will cover some technical explanations around why an emergency declaration and an executive order come into play here. And Catherine will also touch on some of the nuances from this tragedy that are different from other mass casualty events. The night of the shooting, I just want to thank you, Mayor Penrose, in regards to what Matthew had shared earlier. The document that you forwarded from Victims First was really helpful, and I referenced it several times in the last 2 weeks. There was really practical advice within that document around how to navigate the media frenzy that descended on Half Moon Bay. There was advice on using language that doesn't re-traumatize victims. And to Matthew's point, there was a strong recommendation to create one centralized victims fund for the collection and the distribution of donations and contributions. So staff contacted the president of Victims First, Anita Bush, who just made herself graciously available day and night and helped us navigate this very difficult new world. At the same time that was happening, Catherine was in contact with the city attorney for Monterey Park, who was also researching a centralized fund for victims of the ballroom shooting. And staff had also met several times with Vanessa Bechtel. She's the CEO of the Ventura County Community Foundation, who administered a fund for the victims of the Borderline Bar and Grill shooting. So as this was happening in those first 24 hours, 48 hours, donations did start pouring in, and local nonprofits were able to provide much needed and immediate relief to almost 20 displaced households in the days and now the weeks following the shootings. So the nonprofits that we've been working with really closely, who've been administering a lot of these resources, are aware of the centralized victim fund approach and recognize the need for longer term victim support. Based on precedent, staff believes that a direct assistance to victims fund can be swift, transparent, and credible because there are, frankly, very hard-won best practices that were largely modeled by Ken Feinberg. Ken Feinberg led the sensitive task of establishing protocols to allocate victim compensation funds for 9/11. He also assisted with the Boston One Fund. And then closer to home, Mr. Feinberg directly advised Erica Wood, the city's economic development consultant for the Coastside Recovery Initiative, when Erica helped with the creation of a victim fund following the Gilroy Garlic Festival shooting. Erica was at the Silicon Valley Community Foundation at the time. So we have great expertise around the table in forming this concept. City has identified 2 highly reputable and respected public charities that have complementary strengths: Mavericks Community Foundation and the San Mateo Credit Union Community Fund, both of who are represented in the audience tonight. Roles of these institutions were described in the executive order that was attached to the staff report. But just to quickly recap, the San Mateo Credit Union Community Fund will establish a designated fund for accepting donations and making grants to individuals that were impacted by the tragedy, regardless of citizenship status. City would delegate authority to the credit union and to Mavericks Community Foundation to appoint an oversight committee. Mavericks would convene and staff that oversight committee, which would be made up of key community and victim group members that will then develop a distribution protocol that's structured around severity of injury, which is again in line with best practice. So an example of a fund structured by severity of injury could look like, in that first tier, family members of the deceased. The next tier could look like those affected with life-altering injuries and hospitalizations. Another tier could look like witnesses to the shootings or who were displaced as a result of them, just as an example. So Mavericks will also lead efforts on developing messaging and frequently asked questions and other documents to support the fund. I also want to point out that there are some really key and important guiding principles shaping this concept. One is demonstrating full transparency of monies raised and grants distributed. And in our research, that can take the form of independent audits. That could be sharing and publicizing the protocols on websites. That could take the form of an update to this council or another public meeting, for example, in the future. Also want to point out that 100% of contributions raised would be going directly to victims. So there's no fees that will be charged or levied in the process of setting up the fund or allocating the funds to the beneficiaries. And as for funds that have already been raised in the last 2 weeks, they could potentially funnel into this fund if there was a desire to do that, but that's not a requirement or an expectation. There would be no needs-based testing or rigorous eligibility requirements or conditions on how the money could be used by the recipients. The assumption in a fund like this is that victims have already had so much choice taken away from them, and they are best positioned to determine what their long-term needs look like. So I'm going to turn it over to Catherine, who's going to take us through some of the technical components of structuring such a fund. Catherine?
Great, thank you, Karen. So the council's being asked to consider 2 recommendations tonight, 2 actions. The first, as was mentioned, is to declare a local emergency related to the shooting. And the second would be to authorize the city manager to execute an executive order establishing what we've recommended be named the COSIDE Victims and Family Support Fund. So in terms of why staff's recommending the local emergency declaration, this isn't technically necessary to establish the fund, but the 2 often do go hand in hand. The state law allows the city council to declare a local emergency in situations where there's extreme peril to persons or property. Here, the shooting revealed a serious public safety hazard with respect to the living conditions of the farm workers. Plus, it exacerbated an existing local emergency regarding the winter storms and flooding events. So this declaration would support the executive order and also would allow the city to seek state or federal assistance, give us additional opportunities to seek state and federal assistance. I did want to note that, as Karen mentioned, I have been in communication with the City of Monterey Park City Attorney, sharing mutual condolences, but also support each other sort of through this process. And it was interesting to note they actually were also in a state of local emergency due to flooding when their shooting event happened, and they declared a second local state of emergency. as well. These declarations last for 60 days unless they're renewed by council. I do anticipate that staff will be coming back to council soon to review both the state of emergency with respect to flooding, as well as this one to see if they need to be continued or if they can be terminated. So that's the first action. And then the second action is the executive order. As Karen mentioned, this has evolved as a best practice for communities that are dealing with tragedies such as these to set up a centralized fund. Normally, community foundations do not make direct grants to individuals. But with this proposed executive order, it may do so. One thing that the executive order demonstrates is that the Victims Fund would lessen the burden of government. That's helpful. It allows those distributions to be made to those individuals tax-free. Likewise, all donations to the fund are tax deductible, which is not necessarily the case with contributions to sites such as GoFundMe. Let's see, the fund also allows for qualified disaster relief payments, which are also not taxable as income. So the draft executive order is attached to the staff report. It's modeled after Thousand Oaks and Monterey Parks and others, but has been customized for the coast side and to our particular circumstances. Both Mavericks and San Mateo Credit Union Community Fund have had an opportunity to review the executive order language and support its wording. Just a few other notes before I wrap up here. Questions have come up about immigration status, and I think maybe Karen mentioned this, but I did just want to emphasize that folks would be eligible to seek distributions and funding regardless of immigration status. And also we've reached out to others who have had situations where next of kin may be living outside the United States, and we're also prepared to support those types of distributions as well. Let's see, in terms of timing and next steps, if the council approves this item tonight, I understand that the fund will be ready to accept donations as early as tomorrow or Thursday. Links are being set up on websites, and a press outreach strategy is in the works. The city, of course, would help to amplify that message. The fund would move quickly. It's intended to be nimble to quickly convene the oversight committee, develop the protocols, make the first distribution, and and potentially additional distributions depending on the level of funding. And the oversight committee would help advise on the closing date for the fund. Ultimately, the city's role here is to get the fund, centralized funds set up, then take a step back and let our community partners and the oversight committee do what they're good at doing. So with that, I will see if you have any questions for me or Karen, and then you can open it up for public comment.
Thank you. I do have one question. I have several folks who have wanted to give money and are waiting for this fund to be established before they do. And they want to give the funds in the names of certain of the victims. Is that something that can happen? So if one victim family is named as a recipient, how does it work?
My understanding, and I'll check and see if Erica or Karen wants to add, is that I don't believe that the donor can say specifically which victim the money would go to, but rather it would go to the fund, and then based on the protocols developed by the fund, those distributions would be made. It certainly could be made. I suspect it could certainly be made in honor of someone, but in terms of actual direct money to that certain individuals, my understanding is that the fund would be in charge of that.
So someone has asked me to come receive a check for each of the victims' families in the Chinese community, for the Chinese victims. So if I receive that check, I can't put it in this fund because then it may be distributed to Hispanic and Chinese. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it would potentially be distributed to Hispanic and Chinese victims. But I did want to see if Erica and Karen have clicked on, so I want to see if they have anything to add to that.
Yeah, Catherine, thank you. And thank you to the mayor and council members. I would ask our partner at the San Mateo Credit Union Community Fund if those donations that you're talking about, Madam Mayor, could be flagged and utilized in the way that is being suggested and still be consistent with the protocol. So I wonder if Wade or Suzanne could weigh in.
Hi, this is Suzanne from San Mateo Credit Union. Thank you for that question. The way that I believe it would work is that the check could be received to the decisioning committee, and that recommendation would be taken under advisement for the decisioning and the disbursement of the funds. But there is no hard and fast rule that would say if you give $5, that $5 will go to a specific individual.
So that leaves me in a position where if I accept a check on the behalf of a victim, I have to personally deliver it to that victim, the victim's family. I'm not sure how that would work.
Mayor Penrose, I might have a suggestion. You know, I've been working really closely with a contact at the district attorney's office, specifically in the victim services unit. And she has really been our linchpin in terms of being the most knowledgeable about next of kin and details around the immediate victims and their circumstances. We've been working really closely with displaced families, but we don't have the level of detail that her office has. And so I think one solution may be getting in contact with her because she's a linchpin of sorts, and she could potentially facilitate something that specific. I think in the spirit of this fund, the structure is more around structure of injury. And it's more of a pot that would have tiers developed. The specificity that you're referring to may be best facilitated through the DA's office. I'm happy to check on that for you.
Great, thank you.
Hi, this is Wade Painter. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm the president and CEO of the credit union, and there's a protocol called donor advised funds, where people can donate for for a specific purpose, like a family member. And yeah, I'm not sure all of the protocols, but I think from what you're describing, with family members wanting to donate to family members or something like that, that there probably is a vehicle to do that through our community fund.
It would be good to know if that's true before I accept any checks. I'm just maybe we should check with the DA's office as well. Wade, I'm not certain, but
well, and I can certainly check with our legal counsel and circle back with Catherine and let her know precisely what we can do.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, we'll run this down with both the DA's office and the credit union, and Karen will get you a sure response before you speak with those organizations that have contacted you.
Okay, thank you. Robert.
Yeah, a quick question. Something Wade just said that clicked for, because you said for a particular purpose. So as far as this fund goes, if someone wanted to donate to Alice and Co-Side Hope, you're saying this wouldn't be the fund to do it, just directly donate to them? Or is this a central housing organization for those kind of donations as well? Someone says, yeah, I really want to donate money for mental health services specifically. Should they, this fund doesn't come into, or it's only really about direct assistance to specific victims? I just want to distinguish that.
Sure. So some funds are set up to directly support local nonprofit organizations. This fund is different from that, though. So if people would like to donate to nonprofits and they support the boots on the ground, whether it's supplies or whether it's gift cards, it could be any number of things, then that donor intent is separate and apart from a donor that wants to specifically make sure that this process is honored, that 100% go to the victims, that there's no fee incurred. It is a distinction. Yes.
Great. All right. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments before we go to public forum? Okay.
Public comment.
Do we have any public who would like to comment?
I don't have any hands raised so far. If there are any members of the public who would like to address this item, please raise your hand. Carolina Carbajal.
Sí me oye.
Yes. Sí, la escucho.
Ok. Quisiera hacer un comentario.
I want to make a comment.
Me gustaría comentar lo que dijo la señora Debbie.
I want to make a comment for Miss Debbie, what said.
Ella dijo de que la comunidad no está nadando en dinero, que no tenemos los recursos necesarios.
She mentioned that the community is not providing enough money because there is no enough resources.
Tiene razón. Nuestro pueblo quizás no tiene tanta buena economía.
You're right. Maybe our people doesn't have enough economy.
Y yo quisiera apoyarlos con un proyecto o presentar una idea.
I would like to support presenting an idea.
No sé si tienen idea de cuál es la tasa de latinos que hay en este pueblo.
I don't know if you know exactly the amount of Latinos that are in this city.
A simple vista se puede notar que hay más latinos que personas americanas.
A simple view, you can see that there are more Latin people than American.
Debido a eso, somos conscientes todos que los latinos ganamos el mínimo.
We are conscious that we, as Latin, we earn minimum wages.
Hay latinos que tienen 2 trabajos para sobrevivir.
There are some Hispanics that have 2 jobs in order to survive.
Aquí hay trabajo en el pueblo.
There is a lot of work in this town.
Nosotros los latinos trabajamos mucho para eso.
We as Latin, we work a lot for that.
Y por ser una ciudad pequeña, dudo también de que tuviéramos la capacidad para dar vivienda a todos los latinos que hay, por decirlo así.
And being a small town, I have doubt that there is a possibility to provide housing for all the Latin people that are here.
Pero me gustó la propuesta que dio la señora Débora.
But I like the proposal that Ms. Deborah provided.
Quizás una manera donde pudiéramos todos adquirir una vivienda más accesible.
Maybe a way to get a house that is more accessible.
No solo para los latinos, también para los asiáticos o las demás personas que necesitan.
Not only for the Latin people, but all the Asian and other people that need.
Sería apoyar el proyecto de construir para casas movibles.
It would be approve the project of building mobile homes.
Es algo que puede generar ganancia para la ciudad.
It's something that can generate an income for the city.
Es más fácil adquirir una traila que comprar una casa.
It's easier to get a trailer than a house.
Para uno que gana el mínimo es imposible soñar tener una casa.
For someone that makes minimum wage, it's impossible to dream on a house.
No podemos pagar un préstamo.
We cannot pay
Aquí puede haber un banco que puede dar buenos préstamos, puede haber lugares para comprar casas accesibles para poderlas comprar, pero si no contamos con eso,
there are banks, well, that can provide some money, but if we don't have enough money to pay for that.
Entonces, si nosotros ganamos el mínimo y ustedes nos apoyaran con hacer lugares que pudiéramos adquirir, como lo es una traila.
If we make the minimum wage, but if you help us to get something like a trailer.
Nosotros no soñamos con tener una mansión.
We are not dreaming on having a mansion.
Simplemente un lugar con tranquilidad, con paz.
Simply a place with peace.
Me gustaría que tomaran en cuenta eso de hacer espacios con trailas.
I would like you to take into account to have spaces with mobile homes.
Es más fácil, creo que nos pudiéramos acomodar a eso, a estar pensando en construir edificios, cuando están diciendo que son 4 años.
It's easier for us to accommodate for that situation instead of, as you are mentioning, 4 years to build a house.
Porque hay que ser sinceros, hay que buscar permisos.
Because being honest, you need to get the permits.
Y veo que todavía están considerando en hacer una subcomisión para pensar eso.
And I see that you are still thinking on making a subcommission to think about that.
¿Cuánto más tiempo vamos a esperar para eso?
How much more time we should wait for that?
Si ustedes quisieran la opinión de la comunidad, nosotros también se lo podemos dar.
If you want the opinion of the community, we can also provide that.
En nuestra comunidad también hay gente que trabaja en construcción.
In our community, there are people that work on construction.
Tenemos personas que también tienen conocimiento de viviendas también.
We have people that have the knowledge on housing too.
Si nos quieren tomar en cuenta, nosotros estamos abiertos a mostrar nuestras ideas y nuestros proyectos. Si gustarían.
If you want to take us in account, we are open to provide our ideas.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina.
I have no other hands raised, Mayor.
Okay, I'll bring it back to council. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that we adopt a resolution declaring a local emergency resulting from the January 23rd, 2023 mass shooting incident and authorizing the city manager to issue an executive order establishing a COSI Victims and Family Support Fund at the San Mateo Credit Union Community Fund in partnership with Mavericks Community Foundation.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brownstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Rohraback,
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jimenez,
Yes.
Mayor Penrose.
Yes, and I want to say thank you, especially to Karen, to Erica, and to Catherine for all the work that they've done to get this fund going. It's going to be great. Thank you. And I have lost my agenda. So I think.
Mission Committee updates, I believe, is next.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we don't have any updates from recent meetings. We had to postpone or reschedule several meetings due to the events of the last couple of weeks, but I would like to announce we have Recreation Commission meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. on Zoom. And at that meeting is where we'll select a new chair and vice chair, and they'll start their priority setting tomorrow night. So tune in to that if you have interest in our recreation services here on the coast. And then next Tuesday night, the 14th, will be our Planning Commission meeting.
Great. Are there any council member committee reports? Are there any items for a future agenda? If not, I will adjourn this meeting.
Good night. Thank you.
And I would like us all to adjourn it in the remembrance of the 5,000 plus victims of the recent earthquake in Turkey and Syria. A truly devastating event. Thank you. Good night.
Night.